600 million years ago, nature brought forth the mountain range now known as the Hamersleys, 700 air miles north of Perth, capital of Western Australia. Deep gorges slash across the range, revealing rock stratas of many colours in the high cliff faces. Early pastoralists in search of grasslands and prospectors in search of gold may have known of the existence of the rich seams of blue asbestos exposed in the cliff faces. But not until a generation ago was any form of asbestos mining undertaken. In 1948, in the shadow of the Hamersley Range, a town was born. A town which in 4 years has grown to be the largest inland town in the north of Western Australia, Wittenoom. The comfortable homes of this remote tropical town have amenities which usually come to mining towns only after years of struggle. Wittenoom provides a fine example of rapid development by progressive private enterprise. It is a monument to the success of Australia's post-war migration program. Migrants from many parts of the world come to Wittenoom, and of the total population of nearly 900, 3/5 are migrants, and 20 different nationalities are employed by the operating company. Most migrants come under a 2-year contract of service, which for many is now nearing its end. It is confidently expected that all will stay on in Australia, and most of them in Wittenoom, when the 2-year term expires. Australia has brought to these people new hope, and they have responded by fusing into a stable, law-abiding community, anxious to play their part in the development of their new homeland. A common language is a prerequisite to mutual understanding, and towards this end the local schoolmaster plays an important part. Regular classes in English are held, whilst special newspapers are circulated by education authorities. Migrants invariably speak in English when conversing together, testifying to the success of the scheme. Like so many other things, medical attention for the people of Wittenoom arrives by air. Each week, the flying doctor arrives from Port Hedland, about 200 air miles away. Emergency calls involve that same long flight. Here, patients at the surgery await diagnosis or treatment. In the near future, the town will have a resident doctor and a modern, well-equipped hospital. Light and fragile freight from and to Wittenoom is carried by air. All passenger travel to and from the town is by the same means, except for the infrequent arrival of a private car. 200 miles from the coast and farther from the nearest railhead, Wittenoom depends upon road transport for its bulk merchandise and mining supplies. Travelling in convoy, road freighters average 5 trips fortnightly between the port and town, often spending many wearying and strenuous hours bogged down on roads made impassable by rain. Tireless drivers, paid by the trip, keep freight flowing from the port inland to maintain life in this remote community. Petrol, mining machinery and supplies, vegetables, fruit, eggs, groceries of all classes, wearing apparel, a miscellany of other commodities, and beer are piled high as the road freighters rumble on their way inland. Beer is indispensable to life in Wittenoom. For 6 months of the year, temperatures above 100 degrees are common, and from November to February, centuries are almost continuous. Heat continues long into the night. From the township, a 7-mile road winds its way up Wittenoom Gorge, in which it was originally intended to establish the settlement. But when it was realized that a labor force more than treble the size of the first estimate was necessary for economic production, an alternate town site had to be found for a population dependent on a mine labor force of 350. Entrance to the mine is made from a bench hundreds of feet up the face of the cliff. The busy scene along the bench becomes even busier at change of shift. Miners stroll from the change room to the mine, prepared for the underground gloom, and ore trains shun back from the mill on their way to the underground battery charging section. The darkness of underground is penetrated by faintly flickering lights as ore trains from different parts of the mine rattle over lightweight rails and head for the battery service section. With only half an hour to effect the change and get the locomotives back onto the job of hauling ore, change of shift means a busy time for battery servicemen. Locomotives are switched into separate bays. The battery case is removed and left standing on the inclined rails of a ramp. Batteries are changed, serviced and recharged every 7.5 hours. Fitted with a battery case that has been serviced and recharged since the end of the previous shift, engines are soon on their way back to their working places. Development work is accelerated by using a hydraulic jumbo mounted on a chassis equipped with wheels. Hollow steel drills to permit water cooling at the cutting edge and reduce the dust hazard quickly penetrate the rock. About 20 holes are drilled each round, and the average advance per round is 5 feet. Air-operated loaders are driven into the broken rock, which is lifted by the bucket and discharged into oil trucks for removal from the mine. The drive section is 8 feet by 7 feet. The top 2 feet containing seams of blue asbestos from 1/10 of an inch to 2 inches. After boring, 2 firings are made. The first to remove the mullock, the second to obtain the upper 2 feet of valuable asbestos fibre. Stoping follows development. Miners bore 20 to 30 holes a shift, and as the stope advances, a regular pattern of pillars remain. Each stope, which is 44 inches high, has 2 working faces to permit alternation between boring and scraping. All material from stopes is classed as ore. Ore is removed from the stope by means of an electric scraper. Steel wire ropes with a braking strain of 100 to 110 tons move the scraper hoe forwards or backwards by a simple hand movement. The 3 feet wide hoe scrapes the ore into the crosscut and then pulls it forward to the chute. Scraping continues until all ore is cleaned out of the stope. From the chute, ore is loaded into trucks and transported along the drive out onto the bench and down to the bin at the mill to undergo treatment. At the mill, large pieces of waste rock are first rejected. The remaining ore is passed through a jaw crusher and reduced to a maximum size of 3 inches. Fine material is then separated, and the coarse material goes to the secondary picking section where fibre-bearing ore is sorted for treatment. After further crushing, fibre-bearing ore is stored in a surge bin with the fine material from the revolving screen. From the surge bin, the ore is fed to another revolving screen in which the fibre is graded according to length. First grade fibre passes first to a fiberizing machine and then to a shaking machine which removes all dust. Shaking raises the fibre to the top of the ore bed and it's drawn off by air suction and bagged from the collectors. Treatment of second grade is similar. All discharges from first and second grade treatments pass on to the third grade treatment section, and from then onwards it is a continuous process of crushing by rolling, fiberizing, screening and separating by air suction until all fibre is freed from the ore. From the collectors, the fibre is bagged and stacked in readiness for transport to the coast. Each year, 6,000 tons of refined fibre leave Australia's only blue asbestos field. But the immensity of the known deposits ensure a long and prosperous future for the town born as a result of the faith and enterprise of the operating company, a company responsible for many fine achievements in the industrial history of Australia.